Blog Talk Radio.
So proudly we hailed at the twilight's last gleaming, whose broad stripes and bright stars through the perilous fight o'er the ramparts we watched were so gallantly streaming. And the Rockies' red glares above bursting in air gave proof through the night that our flag was still there. Oh, say does that star-spangled banner yet wave o'er the land of the free and the home of the brave.
Welcome to the Medlock Post radio show. This is where we educate, entertain, enlighten, and empower. The views and opinions on the Medlock Post radio show are those of the host and guests. They are not necessarily the views and opinions of Blog Talk Radio, Spreaker.com, its corporations, affiliates, or any other podcast streaming services. And here is your host, Richard G. Medlock.
Greetings, ladies and gentlemen. This is the Medlock Post on March 2nd, 2023. And the episode today is number 118. Yeah, in June, we will have been on doing this for a year again, and then we'll move into season 2. I hope you're keeping up with the news, folks, because every day is a new experience. And I know some of you don't want to watch the news, and that's fine. Just read the headlines. Sometimes you just sit there and laugh at what is going on. It is amazing what is happening. Now, today is the show is titled Constitution 101 with Joni Bryan. Joni is with the 917 Society. She's been on before, and this is the society, the organization that is placing pocket constitutions into the hands of 8th graders in schools in all 50 states. So without further ado, welcome Joni Bryan.
Thank you, Richard, for having me today.
Oh, thank you for working this out and being patient with me the other day. Appreciate that very much. We love it when you come on the show, and you have been extremely busy the last few months, and
yeah.
And you had a big event in Mar-a-Lago back in January we want to get to, but what's going on right now with Joni Bryan and 917 Society?
Okay, well, we got a lot of excitement going on. We are working this year. Last year, we opened up into all 50 states, and a lot of people don't realize that there's a federal mandate. It's 108-447, and all schools that get federal money are supposed to have a program on the Constitution on or around September 17th. So that is our mission. We just want to make sure our kids honor and respect Constitution Day, and we give them a pocket constitution. We focus on 8th grade, although the mandate is for all grades. But we focus on 8th grade because we want to give the kids a constitution as a rite of passage into citizenship. And so we know that by our kids reading the Constitution, reading these actual words, it will make an impact on them in the future. You know, it did me because I had never read the Constitution. And so that's what got me excited about doing this project, is when I realized that I had went all these years through high school, through college, through, you know, I was married, raising kids, and I was a social worker, and then I ended up working in a retirement community in my later career, and I realized I'd never read it. And when I started reading it, I was asked a question by someone who had been real involved in the civil rights movement, and he had said, "When's the last time you read your Constitution?" And when I realized I never had, I really was embarrassed that I'd never read it, and I was trying to figure out why. You know, why? Why have I never read this Constitution when this is, you know, this is the law of the land. This is what every elected official takes an oath upon. Every military person takes an oath to defend with their life. And yet here I was, a citizen, enjoying all the benefits of being an American, and yet I didn't even know what was in the Constitution. And so that was really my motivating factor. And then I started to realize, Richard, hardly anyone else has read it. When you look at all of our citizens, you know, what, over 300 million here in America, and so few, I bet not even 1% have read the Constitution.
Well, and of course, I don't know, they say the 2% are attorneys, but some of them probably haven't read the Constitution either, the way they behave.
No, absolutely, they haven't. I mean, I know a lot of our legislators who are elected have not read it. I mean,
yeah, you ask them questions. You ask them questions, and they're just like dumbfounded. Oh, whoops.
Yeah, because it's not a requirement. You know, we don't have that as any kind of requirement for anything, you know, and that should be a number one requirement for someone who's elected to any position, from school board, you know, to anybody who is, hired in the police force, fire department, you know, anyone. You know, it should be, you know, just part of our education, and we've neglected it for so long, and now it's time to bring it back.
Yeah, you know, you bring up an interesting point, and it just gave me a thought, because I have it on my agenda today. We had talked about this last time, is the naturalization oath of allegiance to the United States of America. And I've got that, and hopefully we'll get to go over it. But maybe once you're elected, you have to go through the courses that people go through to become a naturalized citizen.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's a simple test. And when I speak and I travel around a lot, I will share questions. I'll ask questions out of the citizenship test. And in the constitutions that we give the young people, we have, of course, the very first page, we let the teacher sign it and date it and make it a really special moment for the kids, and then the kids sign it. Then we have the Declaration in it, the Constitution, all the amendments, and then we have all the signers' names. And then the last page is the citizenship oath. We want our kids to see and to read and understand, you know, what it means to be a citizen. And so they can take the oath that the naturalized citizens take. Because, you know, we don't have that moment in our education. You know, if you're born here, we just take it for granted. Just take it for granted. And that's the problem. We've all taken it so for granted that we're losing elements of our Constitution because people just don't understand what we actually have.
Well, they don't understand, but there's been a concerted effort not to teach it and to take people away from it, and then sometimes even hide them from it.
That's true. I would agree with that. And also what we're seeing today, you know, there is, it's becoming politicized, and it shouldn't be.
No. We should be looking.
The Constitution is for everybody.
Well, I promote on this show, as you're well aware of, that you should have the Bible and the Constitution beside each other.
Absolutely.
And study from both of them. The Constitution is a constant study. as many times as I've read it and go back and look up something, it's like, oh, another light comes on. So,
oh, yeah, definitely. And these last 2 years, we've definitely had moments where, I've heard elected officials say things like amendments are not absolute. And I'm like, wait a minute. If it's an amendment and it's been signed into law, it is absolute until it's changed.
That's correct. And I think that's what some of these people are referring to. It's not absolute because we're going to change it. We're going to do away with it or something like that. Now, while we're on this, let me read the Naturalization Oath of Allegiance to the United States so people understand what we're talking about here. So here it is. Okay. Quote, I hereby declare on oath that I absolutely and entirely renounce and abjure all allegiance and fidelity to any foreign prince, potentate, state, or sovereignty of whom or which I have heretofore been a subject or citizen, that I will support and defend the Constitution and laws of the United States of America against all enemies, foreign and domestic, that I will bear true faith and allegiance to the same, that I will bear arms on behalf of the United States when required by the law, that I will perform non-combatant service in the armed forces of the United States when required by the law, that I will perform work of national importance under civilian direction when required by the law, and that I take this obligation freely without any mental reservation or purpose of evasion, so help me God, unquote. Mm-hmm. Now, that's a long list, isn't it?
Absolutely. And, I was at a naturalization ceremony a couple of years ago, and I was kind of blown away because one of the federal judge there, actually, in that oath, they left off, so help me God.
Then was the oath official if they left that out?
Well, that makes me wonder because they left that out. And I thought it was very upsetting to me, but I thought that was interesting. I'm not sure what the motive was to leave it out, but it really bothered me because it made me wonder. Yeah.
Yeah, I can think of many reasons they leave it out. But I don't know if I was there, I might have raised my hand. I said, sir, you left out, so help me God.
I was dumbfounded because I thought, did I hear that correctly? And I went back and weren't supposed to have phones and things, but we do. And we have phones everywhere we go. And it was left out, and I was kind of blown away. And that's something that I think people, our Constitution was founded on moral, biblical principles. I mean, our Declaration actually came from sermons.
Yes.
10 years before it was even written, it was preached in the pulpit. And even Abraham Lincoln said, he said, let the Constitution be preached from the pulpit. Let it be, spoken of in the halls of Congress. Up until just recently, it was understood that our Constitution was written for a moral people, and we had a moral compass, which was biblical. It doesn't matter, you can be here in America and be in any religion or no religion. That's your choice. But it doesn't take away the fact that we were founded upon biblical principles and moral. I mean, I think it was John Madison that said, or James Madison that said that the Constitution was written for a moral people.
A moral and righteous people.
And basically it'll work for no other. If we can't govern ourselves, our role as citizens, the whole role of the Constitution is for us to understand our role as citizens.
Well, and it's understanding
that is the purpose.
Yeah, and it's understanding our role, and as the founding fathers found out before they could declare independence, they needed to know, and the people needed to understand themselves, that they were virtuous enough to be a self-governing people.
Right, because that's the key, self-governance.
We've gotten away from that principle to where people, instead of being self-governing, turn too much to the government for, well, you tell me what to do. You take care of this. You're the ones in control. You have the money. And that's just the opposite of how this thing was set up. So,
oh, absolutely. Absolutely. We're really trying to replace our government. We're trying to replace God with our government. We want to make people dependent on the government for everything. And that, is not how our country was founded. That's not the intent. The intent is for us. We are sovereign. The people are sovereign. And we elect people to represent us. And I think one of the things, I was thinking about this yesterday, and I don't know how, I'm interested to get your opinion of it, but something that really just kind of hit me is that, I've been told by people who get elected and go to Congress, I've had several different, on both sides of the aisle, Democrat and Republican, tell me that when they went to Congress, they were told that it didn't matter what your constituents want, you have to toe the party line. Whatever the party says, you've got to do what we say, or you're not going to get committees, you're not going to get this, you're not going to get that. And I thought that was very telling, because when someone is elected, yes, maybe they were elected as a Republican, or maybe they were elected as a Democrat, but they're still supposed to represent, like in Congress, each congressperson represents, I think in the House, they represent, is it 750,000 people? It's something like that,
yeah.
But, they have people who are Republican and Democrat and independent and, no affiliation or whatever. So when they're elected, even if they're an elected Republican or elected Democrat, they're still supposed to represent everybody in their district.
Well, this is the challenge that we've had for decades now, because when Congress found out that they could start passing laws to benefit them instead of the people, we can take the money from the people and benefit here, and we can get money from the lobbyists and the special interest groups and do what they want to do because it benefits us. I mean, we sit here and look at some of these legislators and government officials that came into Congress or the Senate or even the presidency with not that much money, but when they left, they were very rich. And you're
Absolutely.
sitting there going, that's not supposed to be like that. And
right. I was kind of blown away when I started to learn more about how Congress, it's not illegal for our Congress members to participate in the stock market, even if they're voting on things that will affect it. Now, it's considered unethical, but nobody challenges it. But
well,
it's
they're
not
trying
illegal.
now. They're trying now.
Well,
It used to be that when you went into public office on a federal basis, you had to put your public holdings into a trust and somebody managed it, and you could not do anything with it until you were out of office. And that's the way it should be, but they got away from that. Now, we can sit here and say, okay, it's illegal, or it's not illegal, but ethically and morally it's wrong. So that brings me to a couple of quotes I read yesterday on my show, which was Rules for American Patriots. I don't know if you got to listen to it yesterday, but two quotes here. One by John Quincy Adams, who was Secretary of State at the time, and this was July 4th, 1821. He says, quote, "From the day of the Declaration, the American people were bound by the laws of God, which they all, and by the laws of the gospel, which they nearly all acknowledged as the rules of their conduct," unquote. So here's a founding father telling us, or reiterating, the founding of America was found on Judeo-Christian values. And that the Bible was put into schools to teach principles and values, not about converting people, but principles and values. I think you and I both can have friends that have never been member of church or did but don't go anymore, but they're still good people. they
Yeah,
have good
absolutely.
values.
Absolutely. And, that's where I think it's so important, that we make sure that our young people do understand, the founding of our country and that we are. And I was really encouraged. I actually was watching something a couple days ago, and there was a survey done. And I like to watch Jordan Peterson. He's a clinical psychologist from Canada, and he is just brilliant. I think he's just brilliant. And my degree is in social work and biology and chemistry. I have a kind of a varied background, but and I did work on my master's in clinical psychology, so I really like listening to him. But he was talking with, I believe it was Newt Gingrich, and they were talking. So there have been some surveys going lately that show that our Gen Z, which is the group that we're working with, our we call them Zoomers, I guess. A lot of people call them Zoomers. But that Gen Z, that they are starting to embrace conservative values because our young people are even seeing how things have got off track.
Well, you're
our
starting
young
to
people
see...
are yeah. I mean, they're seeing the problems, and they're not happy about it. And they're seeing the division, the political division. In fact, there was a survey, I think it was Pew Research did a survey not long ago, saying that the people of the country are pretty disgusted with both parties right now, and they don't have confidence in either one.
Yeah, that's not a hard poll to run anymore. I know. And also you look at, a couple of weeks ago, or it ended last week, was that revival that went on in Kentucky for 2 weeks? Yeah. And they had over 20,000 college students show up to that thing, and some others popped up around the country because people are saying, wait a minute, there's more to what's going on here. And they're also seeing their friends. They're not happy. They're miserable and living the lifestyles that's not good, and they're opening their eyes to this. Now I'm going to read one more quote. This is Sir William Blackstone, which was Great Britain, and he was an eminent English jurist, and the founding fathers studied him as well as Cicero and John Locke and the others. And he gives this quote: "Man must necessarily be subject to the laws of his creator. This will of his maker is called the law of nature. This law of nature is, of course, superior to any other. No human laws are of any validity if contrary to this, and such of them as are valid derive all their force from this original," unquote. So what he's saying here is if man's laws are not in line with God's laws, they're basically invalid. Right. And we have
a moral.
Go ahead.
We have a moral compass inside of us. Our conscience. We have that. And I was talking to someone who's working on our website, and we had a really good conversation yesterday about all this artificial intelligence. And he was talking about how, as great as artificial intelligence is, that it can't make a moral judgment.
No.
And, we were just going into a lot of detail about, he gave me some really cool examples of that. And I thought that was very, telling. We're created in God's image. And I think there's this push. I think there is this, I guess you'd say, I don't know the exact word to use, but there is a group, and there's extremes on either side. You've got your extremes on the right, your extremes on the left. You have extremes everywhere. But there is this push to replace God with government. And I see that very obviously. I mean, it's a very obvious thing. And but we're never going to change human nature. human nature is basically, things go in cycles. And, human nature, you're never going to have utopia because you're never going to be able to take away greed and corruption and, all these different things that human beings, are capable of, but we're also capable of amazing, wonderful things, fantastic things and kindness and goodness. And, so we have that also. But I think that is the real dilemma is, that's why socialism never works,
No.
because you always have the elite who are the corrupt, who want to lord over all the other people. And, that's not, it's just not going to work.
Yeah,
and we've seen it over and over
fall.
again. It doesn't.
That doesn't fall under the natural law that Blackstone and John Locke were talking about.
Exactly.
And we sit here and look at this artificial intelligence. We look at the globalism that's taking place right now, and they basically want to make humans into robots.
Yes.
And just do their bidding. That elite up there, those countries it's never turned out well for the people.
No.
It's always been a failure, and they don't teach that in school. But this goes back. I'm going to go back. Yesterday, the rules for American Patriots. The first one I talked about was following the admonitions of the founding fathers.
Mm-hmm.
And when they wrote the Constitution, they fully understood human nature that you were just talking about. That people you're going to have the good people and you're going to have the bad people. It's human nature. And the founding fathers wrote the Constitution with human nature in mind, not with changes in computers or A1 or landing on the moon or advanced weapons. No, it was written about human nature. And that's something that is not taught. And I think it needs to be part of that curriculum as we go forward.
Oh, yes, absolutely, because it's so crucial. Our founders knew. I mean, they had experienced, corruption and tyranny and the monarchy, and they had experienced all those things. And so when they wrote our Constitution, it was just absolutely brilliant. And I mean, the hours and hours they debated. That's something that disturbs me today is that we're not allowed to debate. Our country was founded on debate. I can learn from other people. If I get in a conversation, when you have differences of opinion, I know Jordan Peterson says this, that it is uncomfortable, because if you're having a discussion, unless you're just, shooting the breeze, as he says, it's going to be uncomfortable if you have a difference of opinion. But that's important to be able to share differences of opinion, and that's part of the checks and balances. That's why we don't want one party in power. We want to have, a division of different groups, different power, because, we learn from each other and we become better, hopefully. Right now it feels like we're getting worse, but, we have the opportunity to become better through our debate and our learning from each other. You may share something with me that may open my eyes because your experiences are different from my experiences. And we can't be afraid to share those things.
Well, it's like I teach, there's no bad idea. But when you're sitting there with somebody that has a different opinion, and it goes back to your self-esteem and your wisdom that you've developed or should be developing to be able to sit there and listen to an opposing view or a different view and just listen to it and understand what they're trying to say and then move on. You don't have to accept. It's not like you have to accept what they're saying. And I think that's the crux of what has happened is they're saying, oh, if they tell you something, then you don't believe it. You need to get rid of them, get it out of the way. You don't need to have a discussion about it. Just move on, call them names, and move on.
Right, and I think we've come to a point in our society to where you have this group that expects everyone to approve of them. And here's the thing. Nobody has to approve of anybody else. As long as we respect each other's decisions as adults, as long as what you're doing is, is legal and it's in your pursuit of happiness, have at it. You go live your life, I live my life, and we respect each other, but we don't have to approve. Someone doesn't have to approve of who I choose to be with or how I choose to live my life. But as long as I'm doing everything within the context of being a good citizen, then it doesn't matter if people approve. But that's what we've come to today. We've come to a situation where, I believe that this is morally okay, so you have to approve of it. We have people who are basically taking the place of God and trying to be the moral authority.
And they're calling
they're
calling things.
They're trying to be the moral authority.
They're calling things rights when they're not rights.
And they may be right to them, but they're not right to me, and I shouldn't have to conform my belief. Just because you believe a certain way, I don't have to conform my belief. I'm a citizen too. I have a right to pursue my happiness, and so I don't have to prove, but I have to respect your right.
Oh, yeah.
And I think that's what we've got to get back to. Respect each other's rights, but you do not have to approve of someone else's lifestyle.
No, and I think a great example, and this might be over some people's heads, Henry Fonda and Jimmy Stewart, two great actors way back in the day. Henry Fonda was a diehard liberal, and Jimmy Stewart was a great American conservative. And Henry Fonda was a great American. And, of course, he was the father of Jane Fonda, to put things in context here. Well, they were best of friends. They did movies together. They lived close to each other. They were over at each other's house all the time. They were always having political conversations. But they remained friends until the end because of their respect for each other and their opinion. And neither one was trying to convince the other one, I'm morally right and you're morally wrong, or vice versa. It's that this is how I feel and this is the way I'm going to do it, and I'm going from there. And that's fine. That's that respect that we give to people. And I don't like the word, say, well, we have to tolerate how they feel. Well, I don't like that word. You feel one way. I'm going to respect your right to feel that way.
Absolutely.
And if we can get over that hurdle somewhere, somehow, then we can start correcting a lot of things in this country and going back to the Judeo-Christian values that this country was founded on.
Well, one of the things that we promote with the 917 Society, we also work with the American Bible Project. And, a lot of people don't know the story about the Aitken Bible and how, King George had the copyright, the license, actually, for the King James Version of the Bible. And he would not let them print it over here. And so during the American Revolution, they ran out of Bibles. And so Robert Aitken, who did a lot of the publishing for Congress and for, that time period, he took it on himself to print the Bible. And so we encourage, once we get the constitutions to the kids, we let the teachers know that if they're interested in having an American Bible, it's an exact replica of that Bible. And in it, it says, and this is still on the books today, but Congress encouraged every citizen to read it. And, that's still on the books today. That's still in the congressional record. And so we let them know that they can get a replica of that Bible. And so we work with that organization to try to let them know when teachers want that Bible, we can get that put in their school. And it's taught not from a religious perspective, but it's taught from a perspective, it touches on several different standards for the curriculum, and that includes embargo and trade, copyright. It includes a lot of different standards that they need to teach, and so it's a really cool way for teachers to teach those things using the American Bible.
Well, there's so many resources out there. And that brings up to something I have on the list here, and that's the 917society.org website. Now, ladies and gentlemen, this is a terrific source to go to start understanding the Constitution, to understand the Declaration of Independence. And you have a section on there. You got one section and your picture's in there. But you have, it's called resources.
Mm-hmm.
Up at the top, you have about, get involved, resources, contact us, and donate. If you go to resources and click that open, it says Constitution Education. Folks, this is from, and you give them the credit. I'm trying to find it now. Where'd it go? He's from Florida. That put some of this together. Well, anyway.
We got games. We have Keith Broders, who gave us a whole website full of Constitution games that the teachers could use. Their curriculum, their lesson plans, and it's from a variety of sources, because the thing we want people to understand is we want our kids to honor and celebrate Constitution Day. We are not trying to tell them what to believe. We want them to read the words for themselves and form their own opinion. So we give a variety of resources, everything from NEA lesson plans to the 1776 Commission. I mean, we do a variety, so the teachers can pick and choose what they'd like to do, or they may have their own, which is fine. But we just want to make sure.
You have the Constitution study. You have the podcast from the American Out Loud Network, which is it's interesting. Those are interesting. I've watched those. But you've got articles and videos and podcasts. That's just one section. You've got the Bill of Rights institution. You got short synopsis videos, which we're going to get into some of those. You've got the E-Constitution on there. You have stuff from the American Legion and the 1776 Unites, the American Constitution 101, and you have an audio book and audio CD on the Constitution. You got historic Philadelphia, Gettysburg, and Amish country information on there. It's on and on. The one thing I don't see on here, Joni, is the Federalist Papers.
Well, now that's something we can add, because what we did was we tried to find as many free resources, because our whole goal, we're a 501c3, and our mission is to provide the constitutions. We print these free for the kids and teachers. And so we're getting ready to print over 2 million is our goal this year, and to reach into all states. And so we work really hard raising money. So when people donate, the money goes toward printing our constitutions, our distribution to the schools, and also to help us with more resources. We're working on a Bill of Rights series with our Abraham Lincoln impersonator, which is really great. We're working on a teacher. I have an 8th grade teacher that has used our constitutions, and he has a 17-day course, and they actually do a big certificate presentation. They pass a test. It's just a really cool thing, and he's putting that on video for us, so we can share that with other teachers. And this is a teacher in the classroom, 8th grade teacher in middle school here in Tennessee. So we've got a lot of different things we're working on. But if you have something or a link of something that you feel like would be good on the resource page, and it's free, of course, then, we may be willing to share that. Just, you can email me at Joni at 917society.org. It's Joni at 917society.org. And if you have some information out there that we don't have, we can put that on the website.
Yeah, because you can put the full Federalist Papers up there, but there's also a website. It's a synopsis of the Federalist Papers, which might be for the students in the 8th grade a good thing to have. So,
well, if you put that link, Richard, send it to us, and we'll see about putting it on there.
Okay, but what I'm trying to get here is this site. If you want to start getting into the Constitution, 917society.org, and go to resources, constitutional education, And you could sit there for weeks and go through this stuff. Do it as a family, individually, or as a family. Use it in a classroom. Whatever you want to do. And
church, Sunday schools, churches, we need to, that's a wonderful place to begin is, like I said, Abraham Lincoln said, let the Constitution be preached from the pulpit. That's a great opportunity for church groups, to do a Constitution study.
Well, there's so many resources on your site to look at and to use wherever you have a choice. You might be giving a speech somewhere. I mean, I gave a speech a couple of weeks ago, and I used some of your stuff. And then, so it's interesting. But when you go back and I read them, you have a lot of religious leaders through the years, even up to now, that talk about the Constitution and the importance it is to the American people today, and not only us, but to the world. This was written for the world.
And one of the things that bothers me a lot, of course, we know Martin Luther King, and his legacy, but today we have become so. I don't really like that word woke, but we have become to such an extreme that we're actually ripping apart so much of what he and the freedom fighters and the civil rights movement was all about. And I believe that he would be just absolutely appalled at what he's seeing happen in this country today, because, we were getting toward a colorblind society. We were working toward that. That was our goal. And we were getting there, so much so that in 2017, the Pew Research Institute had been doing studies or surveys about interracial marriages. And so, I grew up in the South, and when I was growing up, that was not something that was very popular. It was kind of frowned upon. And so by 2017, when they did the last survey about do you approve of interracial marriage or not, almost 90% of the population said, hey, there's nothing wrong with that. That's perfectly fine. So you can see where in just a matter of, 40 years, we had went from this was something very frowned upon to where, no, it's fine. There's not a problem with it. They quit doing the surveys because so many people, it had just, our society had been becoming colorblind, And sure, we've got a long way to go. I mean, we're never going to, as long as you have human nature, you're always going to have people with prejudices and biases. I mean, that's just human nature. We were on our way as a country to becoming more colorblind. I mean, you look at the administrations of the last, 20 years and how many people that are in minorities, who have assumed positions of the ultimate in power, whether it be president, vice president, the cabinet, Congress. I mean, it's amazing. And so we were on our way, but now it's almost like we're going backwards. And that does concern me, because our children need to understand that they are victors and not victims. Every single one of them have an opportunity to be anything and everything they want to be in this great country, if they're willing to work for it.
Well, it's interesting that, you want something, you work for it. That's the way I was brought up.
It's merit. We need a merit. Yeah, it's based on merit. It's not based on color. It's not based on sex. It's not based on gender. I mean, those things, were, that's unconstitutional. We're not supposed to be looking at people's race for a job or sex for a job. I mean, and so it blows me away that we actually have people, just like one of the positions that was introduced to this current administration, I was kind of blown away because the only qualifications was based on race and sex. And I never even knew what the qualifications were. Like, what is this person's background?
Well, this administration doesn't care about your qualification. It's just your ideology. But you made
place to be. That's a very scary place to be because it's not about, it's not colorblind. It's basically as long as you feel, these requirements by sex or race or gender or whatever, then it doesn't matter your accomplishments. And that's a scary place to be because we should always, strive to be the best we can be, and for our hiring practices to be about, the person who's the best person for the job, regardless of all those other things. And so we're heading down a slippery slope. I feel
we've
like
been going down. Yeah, we've been going down that slope for a while.
Yes, and it undermines our civil rights movement. And for everyone who cares about, our equality and our, reaching that ideal of being a colorblind society, everyone should be very concerned about these kids, you're oppressed, you're a victim, that's not right.
Your skin color makes you either a white supremacist or it makes you a victim. And you brought that up earlier about being a victim. And they're teaching this victim mentality based on your skin color and your economic status. And that's not what it's all about. If we go back, I remember my dad, he grew up as a sharecropper, and then World War II hit, and he tried to join the Navy, but he had an ulcer, so they sent him home, and his brother went into the Army Air Corps, but he was a patriot, and when Franklin Roosevelt brought in the Great Society, he was dumbfounded because he said, here are all these Americans that we went through the Great Depression. A lot of us back then at the Gregarian Society was very large percentage of the population. And he says, we worked every day. And if you wanted something, you worked. You helped your neighbor when they needed help and got them over it. And then they moved on. And he says, all of a sudden, the government wants to come in and be your mama. And then that's when we started to see the disintegration of the family because the people were leaning on the government to just do everything for them. And it's like, why do we need parents?
Right, and that's something that really, I grew up, my background is similar to yours. My parents, neither one could afford to go to college, so they moved up from the South. They moved up north to work in the auto industry. And, Daddy worked 2 jobs, and Mom worked full-time, and my grandma helped take care of us kids. And we had that nuclear family. We had that, we didn't have a lot of money. We didn't have that much, but, we had.
But we didn't know better. We didn't know better.
You're right. All our friends were the same. Nobody else was, any better. And so, and we all lived, in the same town, in black and white. And it just, I just don't. I look back and I think we were all in the same boat, and we were all working, just trying to better our lives and get our, my parents were adamant that we get our education because they couldn't get theirs. And so, people, I think it really, it's so sad in our society. And this is coming from white liberal elite people. I mean, honestly, this is where it's coming from. That, if you're white, you're automatically rich, or whatever.
Yeah. Well, it's part of that control factor from the elites, and we want to control everybody else.
Narrative. Yeah, they want to control the narrative. They want to control what you think. They know better than we do. When I was watching the other day, like The View, and I'm like, they literally think they have some kind of moral high ground. And that they are, and I'm like, they are so delusional because they think they have this moral high ground and that they're the authority and the rest of us are just, little peons and we don't have any sense whatsoever. And it's really sad. It's really sad to see that kind of superiority from this liberal group that's out there, they have this terrible superiority complex that, they're better than the rest of us. They're morally, all this virtue signaling and it's really sad because they're delusional.
Well, they are, and it's tough to go down that road. All right, we've had some good discussions here, and I want to try to or just change it up a little bit here. I want to play some sound bites from your website. Matter of fact, from the constitutional resources, and listen to it. They're short, and then get your take on what's being talked about here. So let's listen.
Okay.
The First Amendment in the Bill of Rights was created to protect the heart and core of democracy: freedom of religion, speech, the press, and peaceful assembly. It states, Congress shall make no law respecting an establishment of religion or prohibiting the free exercise thereof, or abridging the freedom of speech or of the press, or the right of the people peaceably to assemble and to petition the government for a redress of grievances. In 1791, when this amendment was written, the Founding Fathers considered it to be one of the most critical elements of a truly representative government. It was evident and vital that the land of the free protect people's right to have a voice. George Washington wrote, "If freedom of speech is taken away, then dumb and silent we may be led, like sheep to the slaughter." This amendment has been debated throughout American history, but has maintained its position as a cornerstone of democracy. The Founding Fathers intended the role of government to protect our natural rights, and through establishing the rule of law, prevent people from hurting one another. The First Amendment continues to serve the American people, allowing citizens to express their valuable ideas, promoting democratic change, and inspiring healthy debate.
All right, that's there's a section in there on the Bill of Rights. There are 10 little videos like that, and we're going to try. I've got 4 here. We'll see if we can get them. But Joni, what's your thoughts on that little video and your comments?
Well, it is so crucial. I mean, it being the First Amendment, I think that's, very telling that they made that the very number one. The freedom of speech, the freedom of the press, the government is not supposed to be dictating to us what we say, what we believe, and it's vital. It's vital to this country, and so that's the very thing that's being shut down. Our voices. If you don't agree, then you don't have a voice. If the separation of church and state, which we know that's not in the Constitution. Congress can't make a religion, but we can pray and do whatever we want, whenever we want, however we want, and I think that's where people are very misled on the First Amendment. They try to say that means separation of church and state, and that's not what it means. It means the government.
It's not even in the Constitution.
No,
separation of church and state, it's not even there. But all of a sudden,
it's an interpretation years later, but it's not in there. And if we truly, because we have kids ask us all the time after they read the First Amendment, they're like, well, how come we can't pray at school? It doesn't say that in the Constitution. So we get to have that conversation. So what do you think it means? Because that's what it's all about, is our kids understanding what it means for them to make up their own mind. Read those words and you decide. And it's amazing how smart our kids are, and they get it. They read it and they get it. It's really encouraging, for us as we are out there doing this work to know that our kids, they read it and they get it.
Yeah, and the First Amendment, to me, is the cornerstone of the Constitution.
Absolutely.
Because without that, everything else falls apart.
And if you look at the date, the Constitution was actually adopted in 1787, but then those amendments, they were so concerned because we didn't have a Bill of Rights. They were so worried about that they went in and on December 15th, 1791, and of course we celebrate Bill of Rights Day, December 15th, but they knew, that was 5 years later, or 4 years later, but they knew that these first 10 amendments were crucial, for the citizens.
There were those. There were those that were concerned that, is the Constitution clear enough about rights? And this is why these were added, to clarify these rights so they would not get lost in the shuffles. Now,
we would understand as a people that our rights come from God. It is expressly stated in our Declaration of Independence that our rights are from our Creator.
That's right. Government is to protect.
Some of the misconceptions our kids have is that the government, the government has money, and that the government grants us our rights. One of our teachers this year said they were blown away when they gave the kids their constitutions, how they asked that question, where do our rights come from? Government is what the kids said.
Yep.
And where does government get money? Well, the government makes money. No.
No, the government makes debt.
Exactly. But until our kids, these are just really basic questions, but it's crucial. And so knowing that our rights come from God and not the government, that they are endowed by our Creator. The Constitution guarantees those rights, but it doesn't give us those rights. Those are inherent in every human being in this country. These rights are inherent in you as a human being, as God's creation.
Yeah. I don't know if you've seen this video. It's First Freedom, the Fight for Religious Liberty. And I'm going to blow my brother-in-law's horn here. He makes documentaries. And he made this video, a documentary about the fight for religious liberty and the First Amendment. And Thomas Jefferson and a lot of the founding fathers are portrayed in this video. And I've got a book. Matter of fact, I will call my brother-in-law and see if I can have him send you a video. You need to send me an address, but and he addresses that in here. And one of the things in here that Benjamin Franklin said was that the First Amendment was not to convert people to religion, but give them the opportunity or the right to make their own decisions. The government shouldn't be telling anybody what to do. But I'm going to get you this, and that might be something you could link to on your website. We're just trying to make it so easy for people to understand the Constitution and the Founding Fathers. And people might get tired of me talking about the Founding Fathers, but I'm not going to stop talking about them. They're so vital.
No, well, me either, because they were brilliant. And when you look at what they were willing to sacrifice, and many of them did. Many of them lost their homes. They lost their families. They lost their fortunes founding this great country, and so they deserve to be talked about. They deserve
absolutely.
Their legacy deserves to live on, and it's up to us. Benjamin Franklin said, we have a republic if you can keep it. And they knew even then, how fragile, this could be if we don't have an educated society and that understands, what they were trying to create here and what we have here. And if we don't make sure that our young people know the Constitution, understand the relevance today, This is not just an old historical document. You know, this is relevant right now, today. We're living under it. And
Absolutely.
it's imperative every single one of us in this country understand, and it's easy to read. You know, there are a lot of people. I actually had a U.S. congressman, when I was first doing this project, I went to him to tell him about it and, you know, how it's a federal mandate and we need to make sure everybody knows about it. And he just looked at me and he said, nobody cares about the Constitution. And
then he should have been voted out of office right then.
Well, he's retired now, thank goodness, but he's lasted another 10 years or almost. And I was just devastated because I thought, you're getting a salary. You took an oath to uphold this document. And when I told him, I said, it doesn't sound like you're upholding it to me. You know, of course, I put him on the spot and embarrassed him. But it really was very telling of where we are. And so I knew after I got over being upset and I had my little pity party and, you know, I thought, well, if I can't get a congressman involved, you know, what am I going to do here? But that really was fuel for me because I'm glad he did it now, because when he said that to me, it put a fire under me.
Oh, yeah, let's get
going. It put a fire under me that I thought if we can't keep going down this road, if our leaders, our people who are elected, they're not our leaders, they're our representatives. If our elected representatives have that attitude, we have got to fix it. And so we need to hold every one of these elected officials. I don't know if you saw that a couple of weeks ago, that there were actually 100 members of Congress who would not vote to disavow socialism.
Yeah, 100 Democrats.
100.
And they were not ashamed of their vote. They were not ashamed of their vote.
They took an oath. But Richard, they took an oath to uphold the Constitution, which is the exact opposite of socialism.
Yes. Yeah. Well, and bringing this up, let me play one more video here.
What makes a just law? This question is at the heart of the Ninth Amendment. Passed in 1791, it is one of the most important parts of the Bill of Rights. It reads, "The enumeration in the Constitution of certain rights shall not be construed to deny or disparage others retained by the people." The founders were not naive. They knew that legal systems are not stagnant. As times change, so too do the people's needs. And this means that Congress will inevitably have to pass new laws. But the founders justly feared that without proper guidance, Congress would pass modernized legislation that did not respect the freedoms and liberties of American citizens. The Ninth Amendment guaranteed that the spirit of liberty and self-governance would be preserved in all future legislation, and that Congress could not, at any point, violate the inalienable rights of life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness that were already guaranteed to all citizens.
All right, Joni, your thoughts on that. A lot of people don't know anything about the Ninth Amendment. So your thoughts here.
Well, I think it just goes back to show you just how crucial our founders felt our Bill of Rights was by placing the Ninth Amendment in there, because it is vital, you know, that none of our rights be infringed upon, and they were adamant about that. And I think that's so. In today's society, you know, it worries me how people are, even like when we went through COVID and all the things we've been through, how people were so willing just to give up their rights, you know,
yes.
so easily. It boils down to they don't understand the importance, you know, of what our founders knew was vital, you know, for our country to be a constitutional republic. I mean, you know, and the thing about being a constitutional republic, you know, it's so important for people to understand that we are not a democracy. You know, we're not a democracy. We are a constitutional republic, and that means we have representation, and our leaders are to represent us. You know, they're not. We elect them, but they are not. And I guess I shouldn't use the word leader. I need to just use representative, because they're not our leaders. They're our representatives. They've been chosen to represent our voice. Right.
They work for us.
To represent our voice, but they're not over us. And I think we as a society, we've kind of developed this idea, and I did it. You know, we elect people, we send them up to office, and we just assume they do what they're supposed to do, and we go about our daily lives not thinking much about it, and not realizing that all that wheeling and dealing and stuff they're doing is impacting us. You know, that we kind of give them a free rein. Just, you know, okay, you going up there and, you know, you come back millionaires, and, you know, what did you do for us? You know?
Well,
and
yeah, they want to know how much money can you bring, how many businesses can you bring to our state, and they don't care about the rest. Now, you know, I did a program on democracy versus a republic, and you ought to go back and listen to that. And matter of fact, you might have posted on your website, and because I do educational things, but it's democracy versus republic, and I described the difference between the two, and what you're just saying here, and basically democracy flows down from Plato, and where the majority rule, and then that turns into mob rule instead of a lawful society. And a republic is representative. We elect a representative, and they are to uphold our best interests and protect our rights. And that has fallen through the cracks quite a bit. And in the Ninth Amendment, the founders were looking at making sure that the laws reflected the virtue of the people.
Right.
And protected their rights, but also looked to the virtue of the people that kept it in line, like Blackstone was talking about. If it's not in line with natural law, it's not a valid law. And we've gotten way off of that. They just pass bills just to pass bills, and to make, oh, look, we're working. We wish they'd go home for a year and leave us alone. So, Artie, so that's a couple of ways. I want to read a quote to you. I'm not going to tell you who said it. I'm going to see if you can guess it. Quote, in our over-governed country, the creative majority have too little freedom, and the tiny minority of wreckers have too much license. The government I shall form next weekend will reverse this decisively, help me free those who create wealth, and to make the wreckers run for cover, unquote.
Wow.
I know. It's a fascinating quote.
Absolutely.
All right.
Absolutely.
It's Margaret Thatcher.
Wow.
This is right before she was put in as prime minister.
And
I love it. She says, in our over-governed country. And that's what we're in America today. An over-governed country.
You know, and I have a lot of people, you know, I listen to all sides and everything, but when I started to read the Constitution, now you have to understand, I've worked for at one point I worked for a state agency as a social worker, and I was involved in policy and, you know, food stamps, ADC, Medicaid, all those different things. And even back then, and this has been right out of college when I was doing this, even back then I started to see that the programs weren't really designed to help the people. They were more designed to keep the bureaucracy going.
Yes.
You know, from having department managers to all the different workers to all the different agencies and the different divisions. And, you know, we had so many, it was unreal at how massive, you know, the government employer was, you know, for all this. And I thought, and yet the people got so very little. You know, it was unreal at how small the benefits were compared to how many people were administering this program. So I started to even question it back then, especially when I started to deal with policy issues. And I started to see the policy changes coming through. And I'm like, this doesn't even make sense, you know. And so it's not practical, you know, for what we were doing, but yet we were supposed to implement these things. And so I started to realize something wasn't right. But it wasn't until I read the Constitution for myself that I started to understand how dangerous having such a big government is, you know, and it's important for us to have smaller government and for our government to be more, you know, the Constitution was written for these United States. You know, our states have a lot more power than they use because they're so beholden to federal dollars. And that needs to change.
Yeah, that started under education and just grew from there, and that even goes to the 10th Amendment, where let me play the 10th Amendment real quick.
Okay.
When the Founding Fathers set out to create a more perfect union, they understood that absolute power corrupts absolutely. This is the spirit behind the 10th Amendment of the United States Constitution. Passed in 1791, the 10th Amendment states, "The power is not delegated to the United States by the Constitution, nor prohibited by it to the states, are reserved to the states respectively or to the people." The idea behind the 10th Amendment is simple. The federal government is only allowed to control what the Constitution allows it to. All other powers belong to the states and to the states alone. The founders knew that without proper restraints, the federal government could become tyrannical and oppressive. They believed in the people's right to govern themselves and that allowing each state to handle its own legislative needs was the best way to achieve this end. Although the importance of limited government might seem obvious today, in the 18th century, it was radical. At no point in human history had another government willfully limited its own authority, purely in the interest of protecting its citizens from itself. The Founding Fathers knew that an all-powerful government would inevitably result in tyranny, so they drafted the 10th Amendment, believing that each state has its own specific needs and that nobody is a better judge of how to meet those needs than the states themselves.
Now, she makes some great points there, and I discussed that a while back in a program, the 22nd Principle of the Constitution, and addressing this states' rights, that the states know more how to address the issues because they're there, they're in contact with them, it's their society within that state instead of the federal government. And she made that point there, that the states, and when the states have in their constitutions and in their different laws, need to meet those needs. Where the government, the federal government, learned we can get the states on federal welfare just like we do individuals, and where they cannot operate without our money, and if they don't cooperate, we withhold the money. How many times have we heard schools and others get threatened, well, if you don't teach CTR, we're going to withhold your lunch money and stuff like that. That's tyranny.
And it's all about more power. It's about power. It's about making the government bigger and more power. And, you know, that's exactly what our founders, you know, were against. And they wanted our states, you know, because when you look at each state, now the state you're in is different from the state I'm in, you know, and our people, our industries are different. People, you know, it's just a whole different.
We have beaches. We have beaches that's what makes us better. We can go to the coast.
I wish, I'm landlocked here, but we can go to the creek. We can go down to the creek. But it's, it's to read that wisdom, because now when I read it, and knowing what my background was and how I saw the bloatedness of the state and the federal agencies and how much money is wasted. And, I think all of us would agree that our federal government is just beyond wasteful. I mean, beyond. I mean, it's not even, it is just unreal at the ridiculous projects that get funded, and here, and it frustrates me because, we're a 501c3, but we don't take state or federal funds. We depend on individuals. And when I see taxpayer money go to nonprofit groups that maybe you don't align with, that's not right. That's why we don't take state, taxpayer money. We want people to donate to us because they want to donate to us, not because, we're holding their taxpayer money hostage, and I think that it's just become so bloated, and just so you look at how much money, to me this sounds ridiculous. I don't know how you feel about it, Richard, but the other day when I was hearing about how we were going to help Ukraine with their pension funds.
Well,
the pension funds in Ukraine, our federal money, our taxpayer money was going to go over to the Ukraine to help with their pensions. And I'm like, wait a minute. We got to take care. The bottom line is our president and the cabinet and Congress, their job is to take care of Americans.
Well, what we have now, their objectives are a whole lot different than that. And we sit here in America, and there's over $1 trillion of shortage in pension funds and the money in the unions. So we're going to send it all overseas, which we all know now. Ukraine is the world's money laundering country, and
we
that's
saw
what
it
they're doing.
back. We saw all that crypto money get laundered back to the U.S. and put into. To me, that's interfering with our political process. If you send money, Congress sends money over Ukraine, they buy crypto with it, and they send that back over to candidates here in America on either side of the aisle. It's wrong. It's just wrong. And,
well, we're in a tough situation. We really are. The Constitution, if more and more people, and that's our goal here, is to get them to understand the Constitution, they're going to start letting their congressmen and senators know, hey, you are out of line. And that's why I've been asking the question, the first question that should be asked on a new bill that's being proposed is, what principle of the Constitution does this bill uphold?
Right.
Or what principle of the Constitution does this bill apply to? If the answer is none, then the bill should be thrown away. And that's what I think the Ninth Amendment is addressing here, is it in line with the Constitution, with the values and virtues of America? If it's not, then we don't do it. And spending money, giving it away willy-nilly, just to line your own pockets or get through an election or whatever, then you see, that's criminal in my book. That's criminal.
Right.
Because that is taxpayer money that they're sending over there.
Right.
It's not their money.
Exactly. It's not their money to send over there. It's our money. But unless we, say, hey, wait a minute, that's our money. And, yesterday I was having a conversation with some folks, and they were talking about going to, making sure your representatives know your voice, what you want. And it's imperative. Every single citizen should have their congressman, their state senator, their state rep in their phone on speed dial.
Yep.
And
Constantly.
when you see stuff going in a direction you don't like, you need to make your voice be heard. Make a phone call. Don't hesitate to show up. If you need to show up at their office, but you need to make your voice heard. And a lot of times as citizens, we just feel like a little ant. We just feel like we're so tiny, we're so small, our voice doesn't matter. But I promise you, it doesn't take that many voices to get your congressman or your senator's attention.
We the people.
Because we the people.
people.
You get in their faces and say, hey, I don't like this, you'll be surprised. They will listen. And so, but if you don't say anything, they'll think, oh, well, everything's fine. So they just keep doing what they're doing.
They accept what I'm doing. I'll just keep doing it. In one of my programs a couple of weeks ago, I suggested to the listeners, you need to start calling your local radio talk shows and voice your opinions on there. And start talking about the Constitution and what's been happening, and this thing with the World Health Organization taking over the world. This has got to stop, and we the people are the ones that have to stop it. I know you emailed me back right after I did that show. You emailed me like, whoa. So.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. We have no business letting the World Health Organization have any say-so. And the fact that we would give over our sovereignty, I mean, we're just handing them our rights.
We're handing them the authority to take away our rights.
Absolutely, we are.
The same thing with the new North America, with Canada and Mexico and the United States becoming one country. And folks, if you hadn't heard about that, it's because they don't want this out. That was signed January 10th, folks, by Biden and the president of Mexico and the president of Canada, to make this one country. No borders. Yeah, what borders?
That's crazy.
But and now we're doing this thing with the WHO, which the United States is leading the charge on that, just like Janet Yellen led the charge on getting the universal corporate 15% tax on all corporations over $1 billion. Well, for a corporation at $1 billion, you're not that big of a corporation anymore. So it's going to affect a lot of people. Well, who's going to enforce all this stuff? That's my question. But Joni, again, I know we could just sit here and go on, and I appreciate your time and working with me. And let's talk soon and get you back on here on a regular basis. But folks, go to 917society.org and go to resources, Constitution, education. Just great resources. Get you a copy of the Constitution. You can download it online. There's all sorts of things, but just pick up the Constitution and the Declaration of Independence and read it.
If they write to us, if you'll write to me at Joni at 917society.org, we can put you a copy in the mail and send you one of our constitutions. And also, I just want to make a quick mention that, make sure that your schools know about the federal mandate. All it takes is a phone call and say, what are you guys doing for Constitution Day? It's all about educating, and we're educating our educators to let them know that there is this mandate. They're supposed to be doing a program on the Constitution. Here is a free program you can have if you'd like to have it. We will provide it for all the 8th graders across the U.S., and they each can get their very own Constitution to carry with them. And it's a fun, exciting program. The kids are loving it. The teachers love it. And the parents and grandparents are loving it, too. So, get involved. Volunteer. You can volunteer on our website to help in your community, to get the word out. So there's lots of ways you can get involved.
And it's free.
Yeah, absolutely. If you can donate to it, great. If you can't, you can still get involved and volunteer, spread the word on social media. It doesn't cost a thing to tell someone about it.
Well, I suggest they go to your website just to see how big you are. and how involved this is.
Growing. You know, there's definitely a need for this project. There has been a need for a long, long time. And so, you know, it's real exciting to feel like you're making an impact. You're making a difference. I want to just tell a real quick story if we have time. We had a young man. We have
5 minutes.
Okay, we had a young man get his Constitution here in Tennessee in 8th grade, and his mom was at a meeting I was at, and they had moved here from California, and because they were so disturbed about the things happening out there, they moved to Tennessee several years ago. And so she said her older son, she was really concerned because he seemed to be just, you know, heading in the wrong direction. And the 8th grader brought home his Constitution, and his older brother, who was in 12th grade, started reading it and got so motivated that when he went to college, he formed a Turning Point USA chapter, got real involved in, you know, conservative issues, dealing with the Constitution on his college campus. And I thought that was so wonderful, you know, that just that one Constitution made that kind of impact.
And that's all it takes is one.
Yep.
It just takes one person to wake up and see the change that and the work that needs to be done, and then off it goes. So support this effort. If all you can do is make a small donation of $25, that supplies one classroom with pocket constitutions. So, and if you donate $5,000 or more, you get free immunity from all past crimes and any future crimes. So, I'm joking, folks. I'm joking. All right. All right. We have come to the close here. Joni, again, it has been a pleasure. You're just so invigorating and uplifting, and enjoy talking about the Constitution and what you're doing. We didn't even talk about your fundraiser event you had at Mar-a-Lago in January 28th.
We're going back next year on March 7th of 2024. It was such a huge success. It was just a very moving event. It was so exciting. Just that we had, you know, congressmen there. You know, we had school board members. We had all kinds of folks there speaking and participating, and all of our wonderful 917 Society members. A lot from Tennessee came. Plus, we have our Florida group that we're working with, and we want groups all over the U.S. to be part of the 917 Society. So we want people in every state, you know, to join us and be a part of it. So it was really great. But we will have more. You can go to our website and you'll start seeing more about next year's event.
Yeah, and you've got a countdown to Constitution Day.
Absolutely.
Up there, upper right-hand corner. You got a countdown. It's not a doomsday, folks.
Nope.
It's a countdown to Constitution Day, September 17th. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for being here. Joni, thank you. Keep up the good work. I'm going to get you some stuff from my brother-in-law, and just send me your mailing address or P.O. box, wherever you want it to go to, and I'll get that to you. So appreciate it, and have a great day, everybody, and may God bless America.
Amen.